What happens when Russia's drones cross into NATO airspace? What happens when a so-called accident suddenly looks more like a deliberate test of NATO's reflexes? And what happens when Poland, a NATO frontline state, pulls the Article 4 trigger? Friends, what we're witnessing right now could be the first sparks of a confrontation the world has long feared. Stay with me, because this story involves Israel bombing Qatar, Russia taunting NATO with swarms of drones, Medvedev openly threatening Finland and Poland, and Brussels preparing yet another sanctions package. It's not just a headline. It's a tectonic shift in the global balance of power. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Yesterday we were still talking about the shockwaves of Israel's airstrike on Qatar's capital Doha. And while the world was still digesting that, another front opened up, this time in Europe. On the night of September 9th, rolling into the early hours of September 10th, something happened that rattled NATO itself. Russian drones flying in swarms crossed into Polish airspace. Yes, you heard that right. Polish airspace, not Ukraine, not Belarus, Poland, a NATO member state that has already been living as a de facto frontline country since the war in Ukraine began 3 years ago. And according to experts, this wasn't an accident. Russia wasn't just sending drones on a random detour. This was a calculated move, a test. Moscow was probing Poland's defenses, testing NATO's reflexes, asking a very dangerous question. If we strike NATO territory, how will the alliance respond? Poland's Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, wasted no time. Early Wednesday morning he took to X and declared, "Last night Polish airspace was violated by numerous Russian drones. Directly threatening drones were shot down. I am in constant contact with NATO's Secretary General and our allies." And Poland, with the right decision, has invoked Article 4, calling all NATO allies into consultation. Think about what that means. Poland pulled the Article 4 lever, a mechanism that forces NATO members to sit down, consult, and coordinate their response. It's one step below Article 5, the Mutual Defense Clause. But make no mistake, this was serious. Warsaw confirmed that NATO allies were actively engaged, discussing joint defense measures and initiating procedures for a collective response. This wasn't a drill. This wasn't a technical violation. It was the nightmare scenario military planners had warned about for months. Russia intentionally poking NATO to see how far it can go. And here's the irony. For months, Ukraine's leadership, President Zelensky, his advisors, his defense ministers, had been warning NATO allies. They said, "Don't just watch these drones approach, shoot them down, intercept them before they cross your skies. If you don't, this problem will grow bigger and bigger." But Poland and Romania, both NATO members, were hesitant. They feared that adopting such a strategy, shooting down drones outside their borders or near them, could escalate matters. They worried it would drag them deeper into the war. Well, now the escalation has arrived at their doorstep anyway. And let's not pretend this was random. Just days before the drones entered Polish airspace, Dmitry Medvedev, former Russian President, Putin's right-hand man, the attack dog of the Kremlin, issued direct threats. To Finland he said, "Don't prepare for war against us. Don't dream of such fantasies, we will crush you." To Poland he sneered, "You're behaving like a Third Reich. What is this arms buildup? Stop it." These weren't just words. Within days, Russian drones were buzzing through Polish skies. Coincidence? Absolutely not. This was provocation, pure and simple. So how did NATO respond? Publicly they're keeping calm. They say yes, this was deliberate. Yes, Russia crossed the line, but no, they won't yet classify it as an attack. Why? Because calling it an attack would force them into a direct military confrontation with Moscow. And that's a door they're still afraid to open. Instead, NATO frames it as a serious provocation. They say it's being handled. They highlight Poland's success in shooting down some of the drones. They assure Europe that there's no need to panic. But behind closed doors, Brussels is buzzing. Sources say every NATO member believes Russia acted intentionally, and they know this isn't the last time. Meanwhile, fragments of the drones rained down near the Polish border. In one village, debris reportedly hit a house. Thankfully, no mass casualties, but symbolically, it's huge. It's proof that Russia isn't keeping this war contained in Ukraine anymore. And Russia, they didn't deny it, they didn't apologize, quite the opposite. Russian media ran mocking headlines as if to say, "What are you gonna do about it, NATO?" The European Union wasted no time either. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, came out swinging. Her words were blunt. "Today, we witnessed more than 10 Russian drones recklessly and unprecedentedly violating Polish and European airspace. Putin's message is clear and our answer must be clear as well. Russia needs more pressure, more sanctions, more isolation. We are now working on our 19th sanctions package, targeting Russian fossil fuels, shadow fleets, and third-party countries helping Russia bypass sanctions. In other words, Europe's answer won't be fighter jets, at least not yet. It will be financial warfare, more sanctions, more economic pain. But will that stop Moscow? History suggests otherwise. Friends, let's pause and absorb this. Israel bombs Qatar. Russia sends drones into Poland. NATO invokes Article 4. Brussels prepares new sanctions, and Medvedev is openly threatening Finland and Poland. This is no longer just the Ukraine war. This is the slow-motion expansion of the conflict into NATO territory, and everyone knows it. The German chancellor warned just days ago, this man, Putin, will not stop in Ukraine. And now, we see exactly what he meant. So where does this go from here? Scenario 1. Russia keeps poking NATO with drones, cyber attacks, and provocations, testing the limits until one day, something big slips through. Scenario 2. A drone doesn't just drop fragments, it kills civilians in Poland or Romania. Then, Article 5 becomes unavoidable. Scenario 3. NATO overcompensates, rushing air defense systems, more troops, and more deterrence measures into Eastern Europe, which in turn escalates Russia's aggression. And while all this unfolds, Ukraine continues to insist, "We told you so, we warned you, Russia will not stop until you make them stop." Make no mistake, what we just witnessed is not a random border violation. It's not an accident. It's Russia pulling on NATO's chain, daring the alliance to bite back. And the scariest part, this is just the beginning. The front line may no longer be just Ukraine. It could now be Poland. It could now be Finland. The world has entered a dangerous new chapter and the clock is ticking. Friends, this is the moment when history shifts in real time. Russia versus NATO, drones versus air defenses, sanctions versus escalation. The game is moving fast and the stakes could not be higher. If you want to stay ahead of these developments, make sure you don't miss what comes next. Hit that like button if you found this breakdown valuable. Subscribe so you're always updated on the latest twists in this global crisis. And drop a comment. Do you think NATO should respond militarily to these drone incursions or stick to sanctions? I want to hear your thoughts, because trust me, this story is far from over. Stay sharp, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.